Well, good evening, everyone. We do not have a pastor here this evening, but in lieu of an opening prayer, would you please stand so we could have a moment of silence for the Merced College students that were injured today. Thank you. Please be seated. Oh, we're going to, just a minute, I want to call to order here. Yeah? Jump the gun. Okay. I'd like to call to order the November 4th, 2015 meeting of Los Banos City Council. And would you please stand for the flag salute? Chief Breezy, would you lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Director Maloney, roll call.
Faria. Here. Lewis. Silvera.
Present.
Stonegrove. Here. Volota.
Here. We do have a quorum. Let's go on to item 4, consideration of approval of agenda. Do I have a motion? Mr. Silvera.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to approve the agenda as submitted.
Mr. Faria.
Second.
Motion by Silvera, second by Faria to approve the agenda as submitted. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? None carried. Let's go on to item 5, presentation, proclamation recognizing Veterans Day. And tonight we have Mr. Rick Toscano and Mr. Mike Hughes to receive the proclamation. Gentlemen, would you please come forward? Good evening, everyone, and it's a great honor and respect that I read this proclamation this evening. Proclamation recognizing Veterans Day. Whereas America was founded on the principles of liberty, opportunity, and justice for all, and whereas Veterans Day is a day in which we recognize the men and women of our armed forces who have valiantly defended our country's values throughout this nation's history. And whereas by answering the call of duty and risking their lives to protect their fellow countrymen, these patriots have inspired us with their courage, compassion, dedication. And whereas universal recognition is given to be celebrated the ending of World War I fighting at 11 a.m. on November 11th, 1918, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. And whereas there are currently more than 25 million living American veterans, many of whom put their lives on the line to preserve our freedoms. Our proud veterans have given our country an extraordinary legacy of patriotism and honor, and their service represents the highest form of citizenship. In honor of all our proud veterans, the ones that are here today and the ones that have gone before, we invite our community to give a moment of silence in respect and thank you on November 11th, 2015. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the mayor and the city council members of the city of Los Banos do hereby celebrate the day of November 11th, 2015 as Veterans Day, and encourage all citizens to give thought to the history, valor, and sacrifice of our veterans through appropriate ceremonies and prayers.
Mayor and council members, we'd just like to remind you that on this Saturday we're going to have a big day for the veterans in Los Banos. We're going to start with a breakfast put on by the American Legion Auxiliary for $7 a ticket. from 7 till 9 o'clock in the morning, or 7 to 10 o'clock in the morning. And then we're going to have the Veterans Parade. This is the second Veterans Parade in Los Banos. We have over 100 people involved and going to be in the parade this year. We have several military vehicles. That parade is going to be happening through up 6th Street and then down I Street to 4th and then to over by the fairgrounds. And it starts at 11 o'clock in the morning. After the parade, we're going to have a kind of a block party street closure over in front of the VFW Hall on East Street. And we're going to have a lot of the vehicles parked over there so people can look at them, get onto it. They can just have a good time with their families, a good family day. And we're going to have 2 hot dogs, chips, and a drink for $5, or a hamburger, chips, and a drink for $5 from the veterans. We're going to have a lot of the veterans out there from Los Banos, and it'd be a good time for the community to come out and say hi to them and just thank them for the service that they've done for this country.
Thank you so much, Mike. And so if you can make it this Saturday, and the breakfast starts at 7 a.m., 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., and the parade starts at 10?
Pancakes, scrambled eggs, ham, juice, and coffee.
Well, that's good. Yeah, all right. I like it.
That's on East Street at the Veterans Hall.
East Street at the Veterans Hall, and then the parade starts at 10 a.m.?
11.
Oh, 11. Okay, an hour later. And then after the parade, they're going to have a lunch for $5. Either 2 hot dogs or a hamburger, chips, and a drink? Okay. So please, if you can come out and honor our veterans. If you are a veteran and you're not involved in the parade, please come out and meet the veterans here in Los Banos. So is there anything else that we can do for you to help you with this?
This year's honored guests, Grand Marshals are Korean War vets. Okay, so we're honoring last year we did the World War II guys, and this year we're doing the Korean War vets. So they're going to be in vehicles, and their names hopefully on the side of the vehicles, and we'll get to see them.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And on a personal note, thank you so much for what you did for my father. Thank you. All right, let's go on to item 6, public forum. Members of the public may address the city council members on any item of public interest that is within the jurisdiction of the city council, which includes agenda and non-agenda items. No action will be taken on non-agenda items, and speakers are limited to a 5-minute presentation. Detailed guidelines are posted on the council chamber informational table. And when you approach the podium, please state your name and city of residence. If you have a cell phone, please place it on vibrate or turn it off. Is there anyone who'd like to speak at the public forum?
Hello, Bertha Faria, Los Banos Chamber of Commerce. Took a little vacation from coming to see you due to the birth of a new granddaughter, but I'm back.
Everybody's healthy?
Everybody's well and healthy, yes.
Good.
And how quickly our year is gone. The Chamber is winding down from all of our activities and already preparing for 2016. With the holidays just around the corner, there are many local events on the calendar. The Los Banos Kiwanis have begun sales for their annual Marie Calendar Thanksgiving pies. Pies of all varieties can be ordered from any Kiwanis member for $13 and picked up on November 24th from noon to 3 at the Miller and Lux building. If you are interested, you can call Barbara at 826-7114 or Jim at 769-6703 to place your order. This weekend will be a busy one for Chamber members. You can start your morning by attending the Veterans Day breakfast prepared by the American Legion Auxiliary from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. at the Veterans Hall, and then head downtown to watch the second annual Veterans Day parade beginning at 11 a.m. Or you can join the Los Banos Lions Club for a bus trip to Tachi Palace and Table Mountain Casinos, departing the Walmart parking lot at 7:30 a.m. You can call Ray Hammersley at 710-9374 for more information. And to end your evening, you can spend it with Sutter Memorial Hospital under the Tuscan sky as they present their annual hospital gala at the O'Banya Building beginning at 6 p.m. All proceeds from this year's event will benefit our emergency department. The Chamber celebrated 2 ribbon cuttings in October. We welcomed Hook and Ladder Hot Wings and Green Valley Charter School's new kindergarten campus. We've also welcomed new members Olga Didi Flores and Golden Gate Media, who will be producing a new city map for the Chamber. Our November mixer will be held on Thursday, November 12th, with Century 21 M&M and Associates and Hot City Barbecue teaming up for this evening event. We now have applications ready for our 2015 Downtown Christmas Parade being held on Friday, December 4th. We'll be happy to email you an application, or you can visit us at 932 6th Street to pick one up. Applications will soon be available on our website at losbanos.com, and deadline for entries is November 25th. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at the public forum? Not seeing or hearing anyone, I will now close the public forum. Go on to item 7, consideration of approval of consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and we voted on in one motion, unless removed from the consent agenda by a city council member. And tonight we have
Items on the consent agenda are as follows. Warrant numbers 156083 through 156318 in the amount of $1,018,811.78. City Council Resolution Number 5707, approving the demonstration test agreement for hexavalent chromium treatment with North American Hoganis, Inc., and authorizing the city manager to execute said agreement. City Council Resolution Number 5708, approving closure of non-essential city offices on Thursday, December 24th, 2015, and Thursday, December 31st, 2015. And the items are to be approved as submitted.
Okay, I see a light on, so someone's going to pull one. So let's go to Mr. Silvera. Did you want to pull one for discussion?
I'd like to pull item B.
Okay. City Council Resolution Number 5707, approving the demonstration test agreement for hexavalent chromium treatment with North American Hoganis Incorporated, authorizing the city manager to execute said agreement. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to pull anything else? Do I have a motion then for A and C? Mr. Silvera.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item B.
Okay, Mr. Freya.
Second.
Okay, motion by Silvera, second by Faria to approve item A and C only at this time on the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? None carried. Okay, Mr. Silvera.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just would like to, I've been getting a few questions regarding in your water statements. People were sending out the quarterly results of the chromium in our water and asking what the city is doing with it, where we're at with that. And so I would like for the Public Works Director to maybe go into a little bit more detail as to what this agreement with Hoganis is and what it's about.
Thank you. I think I'll just present the staff report because due to my mistake, this was put on the consent and it shouldn't have been. Number one, to clarify this, we only are going out every 6 months now due to a new law. So what this is, what we'll be looking for you is to approve Resolution 5707 for the demonstration test agreement for Chrome 6 hexavalent chromium with North American Hoganis Incorporated, and authorize the city manager to execute the said agreement. Real quick background, because I actually have my usual presentation, which we're not going to do tonight, luckily, is 31 pages, so you don't want that. But the background is in July 2014, the new California standard for Chrome 6, which I'm going to call hexavalent chromium, was adopted by the state, 10 parts per billion. First time we had that, it's always been total chromium, which we still have to meet, and we do meet that one. And 10 parts per billion, to give you one idea, is 1 part per billion is 1 second in 32 years. So that's kind of a comparison where we're at. We only have 13 wells that supply all our water, and they're all above that standard They're from 20 to 40 parts per billion. So, in April of 2015, we received a compliance order regarding that we had exceeded chromium-6, which put us on notice that we were out of conformance at that time. And it gave us quite an extensive list of things we had to do. September 2nd, after we gave the State Water Resources Control Board our corrective action plan, they approved it on September 2nd, 2015. So they approved the action plan that I have shown you in the past, the plan that has a 10-year cycle. But on that same day, we found out that there's a new state law, 385. It was signed into law on that same day that made January 1st, 2020 the actual date for compliance with Chrome 6 MCL, which means you'll be out of compliance on that date, not what we think we are now, and that's when they'll do the compliance order. So our compliance order, what I've heard so far, will be rescinded. And probably, and it would have to have been amended anyway because it's only for 10 of the 13 wells, and all 13 at the next go-around would go over the limit. But since we have a corrective action plan that's been approved, it had to be revised. We're still working on that timetable, not waiting for 2020 to do anything. So, and what's kind of important, if you look at that corrective action plan, phase 2, which is a few years off on that action plan, is to evaluate some Chrome 6 treatments, which is what I'm presenting to you today. So if someone comes to us and has a really good idea, we're not going to say no, we're 3-4 years off. We'll go to it now. Now, a little bit of information on this, on what happened here. And about in June of 2015, former Congressman Dennis Cardozo called my office and said that he had a client, and he works for Dennis works for a very reputable legal firm out of Washington, D.C., that he has a client that was interested in to start a pilot study for the treatment of hexavalent chromium. And he called the State Water Board, and they said we were the perfect city to do this because of our situation. The name of the company is North American Hoganes, and it's a 217-year-old company, international, founded in Sweden originally. And its main business is iron powder. It produces iron powder from all sorts of different applications, and they use it in automobile, consumer, industrial, and even food. Water treatment is not their main source of income or their main direction of their company. It's just they, through accidental processes, found out that it really treats very well. And they're using their iron medium to treat chromium as well as chromium-3, as well as all sorts of metals. They use all sorts of metals in it. And what they do, it produces after it's used, the medium is actually usable as iron powder, which is their main company. What's what they make their money off of. That's what that's their expertise. They've ran several tests in Brazil where they've had 60 to 7 parts per billion that have gone down to 3 to non-detect in that area. So they were very successful outside the country. And the important thing about the treatment is, there's several important things about treatment, is the size of the treatment that you need, because we have 13 separate wells. How big is the treatment? What the capital cost is, and what do you do with the medium? What do you do with, because that medium has to be replaced. What happens to it? And one of their big concerns with our particular water is we do have radioactive materials in it, and their big concern is their iron powder cannot be radioactive. It can have up to a certain point. So that's one of the things the tests will venture out to do. Now, what we're doing is we've talked to the State Water Resources Control Board. They're very much behind this test. There's no question about it. This is state-of-the-art technology, and they're very much behind. They very much support us. We already have given a sponsor letter to the State Water Control Board, which they accepted. See, all their testing has to be through us. All their costs are through us. They won't go through North American Hoganes. It goes through us. And we've already said we will sponsor it. We'll sponsor the study, so you go through us, and they're very excited about that. In the meantime, what this agreement says, and this agreement has been approved to form by our city attorney, this agreement, I'll give you some highlights of it. the main purpose is to support certification by the state of California, to get this technology accepted by the state of California. So obvious this company can venture out and talk to a lot of cities about this and present a very doable treatment as it appears now so far. The test shall run 6 months to a year, and that's the initial test. The state, I think, would like it to go longer, and when we get to that stage, we'll talk to North American about that. And I don't think that's going to be an issue at that stage. We just have to get there first. All equipment and materials for the test were provided by North American Hoganis. The city will provide the test sites. We're looking at 2 right now. One's in our yard and one's well 14. And we'll also monitor and report the services as necessary for state certification. We have to do that. We have to bring in the test people. It's our water. The state only deals with us. They don't deal with the contractor or with the consultant at all. They talk to them, no problem, but it has to go through us. Hoganis will reimburse the city all amounts billed by third-party service providers and amounts billed by the state. So that's 100% of the amounts billed by third-party service providers, which would be testers. Anything that we have to bring in to help this study from outside, they're 100% paid for. And all amounts billed by the state, because the state does bill for every hour that they work on this. And charges of city staff time up to a limit, and the limit is $25,000 over the span of this contract in aggregate, unless they give us written consent if it goes over that. And that's just to let them know if they go over that, they want to know. And that's just direct city time, my time, city attorney's time, and the water staff's time, which will not be a tremendous amount, we don't believe, at this time. And also, North American is responsible for the proper disposal of that media at the end of the test. The fiscal impact should be very little, if anything, because 100% cost reimbursement for city staff time and effort is what this agreement's all about for this pilot study. This pilot study will go by the name of Clean It. That's what they call this pilot study. The other thing that's really very exciting about this is front-edge technology. It's something that's really, in the long run, if it helps our city or not, it's definitely going to help many cities in California. It's going to depend on how our water reacts to this, and the main issue is the uranium. But we're going to go in there and see how it works, and we think it shall work fine. We have protocol already being set up by the state, and if you have a question, in the first 2-3 months as they test this material, as they do the pilot test of it, none of that water can go back into the system. They're not going to allow that water to go back into our system until it's tested and we know it's not doing something counterproductive to what it's supposed to do. So we do not put that back in the system until we get state approval on this. So I'm really hoping that you'll approve this agreement. It's really a win-win for everyone involved, really, but especially for us. It gives us a chance to be on the front line. And this is what we're supposed to be doing, is looking for ways to treat this. And this is really, I mean, we're still looking at deep wells, we're still looking at deep aquifers, we're looking at how to make the system in one area, not spread in 13 areas. There's still a lot of issues to resolve, and we're not stopping with other issues, but this is a testing procedure that looks like it has a really good possibility of treating chromium-6. Any questions, let me know.
Any questions? Okay. Mrs. Stonegrove.
I have a question, and I think I may be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but if their test study is successful and they do get certified by the state, then would we be in a situation where we would contract with this company to treat our water in perpetuity, I guess? They would,
well,
we would.
When you decide on one treatment method, you put that capital investment in. Yes, you are, whichever company it is, you do have a tie to that company, or whoever that company ends up. I mean, they're not in the water business, so it's questionable whether to do a branch or how they'll do it with their company. But it's a long way from there because it's a cost factor. They still could be certified by the state very easily, and it could just be too high a cost for us to put right away. I think about a year from now, and the test's supposed to start in January, we'll really bridge some gaps. If it's working, we'll see, because the state wants more than just a year of testing, so we'll see what's in the works for this city with them, because they're committing us as the California pilot study. So we are, it could be very advantageous for us in many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the issue with putting treatment in versus going deeper wells and all. There is a long-term commitment to treatment,
Yeah.
and you just can't avoid that. So,
Thank you.
yes.
The question that constantly comes up, why didn't the citizens hear about this before? And I've tried to explain that the state regs were 50 parts per billion. That's what the state said was okay. Then the State Water Resources Board lowered it to 10 parts per billion. The federal government, the federal standards, right now, total chromium is 100 parts per billion. So feds are at 100, we were at 50, and then when the state went down to 10, that put our wells out of compliance. Chromium-6 is, as far as we know at this time, was a naturally occurring element. And we're going to make very, very sure that that's the truth, that's going to continue to be the truth. But, again, why didn't you hear about this before? Because the state regs were at 50 parts per billion. And they said it was fine. And then they lowered it to 10. So that's why you didn't hear about it before. And then all of a sudden, hexavalent chromium became a household word. Only because the standards changed. Mr. Kerrigan?
The standards changed on July 1st, 2014, so we've been reporting on it for years, but we were in compliance until July 1st, or June 30th, 2014, but on July 1st, all of a sudden, all our 13 wells were not in compliance. Order of magnitude here, first of all, Mark's presentation is very, very, very important. Might not be terribly exciting unless you're up on your chemistry, but this is a $40 to $90 million problem, plus $1 to $5 million a year in operation and maintenance to us. The state doesn't have it, obviously we don't have it. Here comes a solution. It's a creative solution. We're looking into it. We're all just waiting with great anticipation. We want to get down the road about 6 months, and maybe early summer, and we'll really get a better answer. Have Mark come back and kind of tell us how they're doing. But I want to stress that we are going to do some deep well testing next summer, and we're going to continue going down the path of other options also. But like I said, former Congressman Cardoza brought this to our attention, so I really want to emphasize a big thank you to him. But these guys can't get started fast enough for all of us. We're really interested to see how this turns out. Mark?
One thing to let everyone know, this is our second pilot test. We did a pilot test previous with a company, and it was a strong base anion exchange pilot test. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but let's say the bed volume was 1,000 bed volumes. You'd have to switch the bed. You'd have to take the median and change it. It was going at 100 bed volumes. So what was economic to most cities was 10 times less for us. We'd have to change that every month. It was not doable. We didn't continue with that after the free pilot test we had. It obviously wasn't going to work for our system. The other thing, we've been testing particularly chromium-6. The first test we ever did on chromium-6 was in January 2001. All 13 wells were between 13 and 31. So the standard wasn't adopted, but in 2001 it was over the standard. And my first council meeting I ever attended when I got here, Mr. Dwayne Chisholm did actually mention chromium-6, and every now and then it has been mentioned yearly that it was coming. So we're trying to stay on it, and it has been in our system for a while. And we are doing Public Works' goal, and our direction is we have an issue. We have an issue with our standard, the state standard for chromium-6. Our job is to get that, to meet that standard. That's our job. As a side note, we are doing several studies to see if it isn't naturally occurring, what could it have been. But at this point, we've been out of compliance at least, if the standard was in there for as long as we have recorded information. So our position and what our job is to get to that standard. And that's what the compliance report says. It's to get to that standard. So that's what we're working at. We are doing studies to see if we can maybe isolate some areas that doesn't seem to be isolating at all. So we'll keep doing that, but our goal in Public Works is to meet that standard per our compliance, per our studies that was approved by the state.
Okay. Mr. Kerrigan? Any other comments? Mr. Kerrigan, how do they feel about us at the state level right now for what we're doing?
A year and a half ago, Mark and I went up to Sacramento with a consultant and folks from Assemblymember Gray's office, and while other cities were lining up to file lawsuits on this standard change, we took a different approach, and our approach was to work with the state of California. And I have to tell you, they have been fantastic. I know Mark gives me reports every 2 weeks when we sit down. I think we're all interested, when I say we, the state of California and Los Banos is very interested to see how this pilot study turns out, because it could turn into something much bigger, maybe even solving the problem of chromium-6. That's where we're at with this. So right now, we're very good with the state of California. We have a company here that's chosen us, and we're very lucky that they chose us. And they chose us for a couple reasons. One, we have 13 wells, so we stick 13 straws in the ground to get our water. We don't have a backup water source. We don't have a natural polluter, or we don't have a polluter to point to. We are on an island. We're out here by ourselves. So we're number one, and we're unique in that sense. And we are checking, because we just always assumed, and we did phase 1 environmentals, where you go to the file and you check, and it looks like the Earth's plates are causing chromium-6, but we're going further. We're doing some more testing around the city to really try to get to the bottom of it. Is it really the Earth's plates? Is it just where Los Banos happens to be on Mother Earth? Or is it something else? And instead of just accepting it as fact that it's the Earth's plates, we're gonna dig some more holes and do some more testing and try and see if something leads us to another answer. But right now, I'm confident that it is the Earth's plates, but we're going to take another look. We're going to dig some more holes and test some more. So if we come up with anything, or if we don't, we'll report back to you. But my last comment, and I'll pass the ball here to Councilmember Silvera. But Mark, I know you have a 31-page PowerPoint over there. You don't have to give it to us, but I would like it entered into the record, because it's a timeline, a history of everything that's been done. And we've really done made a big effort to keep copious notes on everything we've done. So if anyone asks, or if anybody wants to talk chromium-6, please call me, call Mark Fajan, come down to City Hall, please. We'll talk to you all day long about chromium-6, because I'm very proud of the work that's been done. It's just hopefully we can get a positive outcome here pretty soon.
Okay, Mr. Silvera.
Yeah, a quick question for Mark. And then maybe this is too soon to tell. 6 months is the minimum that we're going to do the test on it. Will you start getting some preliminary results back, month 1, month 2, month 3, to kind of have an idea if it is going to work?
Well, we'll get testing of the effluent that's treated within weeks. There's no question about that. And even in that I expect that fully to match what's happening in Brazil, where it's going to be clean. The question that the state really wants to know is, does the economics pencil? Because that's the biggest issue that's happening with this whole issue, is economics. Cities do not have the money to meet this standard. So will the economics, especially the O&M costs, because the state will help you sometimes with the capital costs, but they do not help with the O&M costs. That goes directly to your ratepayers. So the question is, yes, we'll know if the water's coming clean pretty quick. We won't know about the media until probably even beyond the 1-year stage, and that's something that the state may talk to us about is extend this out or make it more extensive. We want to see more of what's going on. We're actually hoping they make that requirement.
Very good. And so I guess leads me to my comments is that, I just had this conversation on my way to a dinner the other night, and somebody was asking me about it, and so it's to let people know, look, we're taking it seriously. Yes, do I think that it's fair that the standard on one day we're within compliance, and then the next day, because the standard was changed, we're out of compliance? I don't think that was fair, but we did talk about being in the forefront of it. All of our water source, we think it's naturally occurring. We're checking further into it, but we're above the limit. We're above the 10 parts per billion. And so now it triggers us sending out letters. Now it's every 6 months. that we're sending out letters to the water users, and they have concerns, and they're saying, hey, what's going on? And like Mark alluded to, since 2001 is when we first started running tests, our numbers have been over that limit that's been set today. Our wells have always been in that 13 to 30 range. So our water didn't change, the standard changed. And so I want folks out there to know that we're taking it seriously. We're out in front of this. We're working with the state. And again, thank you to Congressman Cardoza for putting us together with this Hoganis. And hopefully in 6 months from now that we can report something back, and maybe you have to drink a lot of it, the way I understand it, of chromium-6. There's good chromiums and there's bad chromiums. Chromium-6 is one of the bad ones. But if it makes our water even safer than it is today, then I think it's, as long as the economics are there, it's for a good cause. So if there aren't any other questions, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve item B of the consent agenda, City Council Resolution number 5707, as previously stated by yourself.
Mr. Freya.
I'll second that motion with the comment, and who knows, maybe we'll have a sign outside of town that says Los Banos, the town that fixed chromium-6.
Okay, motion by Silvera, second by Faria to approve City Council Resolution number 5707 as read by title. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? None carried. Item 8, update on Los Banos Airport site selection and concept study. And we'll go to Public Works Director Frachin.
Good evening again. Tonight we have Mr. Bob Waddell from Waddell Engineering Corporation to present a brief PowerPoint on where the site selection study for the new Los Banos Airport is at this stage. So with that, Bob?
It's not 31 pages, right? Okay.
Hey. No, it's not that long, but I'm willing to talk very, very slowly if that helps you. So we can still get there in a long amount of time. Thank you very much for having me tonight. I've looked forward to being able to visit with you again about the airport. Now that I'm here, I'm a little disappointed I am here tonight because I actually plan my meals in Los Banos, and to find out so much is going on Saturday with the pancakes and then the hot dogs and then the chamber, I'm wondering, well, how did we pick today for this presentation? But we are where we are. I actually have other clients east of here that wonder why my meetings with them are either at 9 in the morning or 3, but they don't know when the buffet closes at España's, so there isn't enough logic for them.
Hey, no commercials.
Okay. But anyway, thank you very much for having me. And with our site study, our task is to take a look at possible other airport sites in the area to see if there are viable sites as possible replacements for the existing Los Banos Airport. And the replacement would be something of the same size, because after all, that's what replacement means. It would be something that would be to FAA standards. It would certainly be something that would be an improved airport and have improved compatibility, designed to the most current standards, and so on. So that's our task. This map, which I don't know how well you can see it from where you are, shows our study area. And in the past, we've done previous studies here. In fact, the first one was actually in 1974, when we had to go through a site selection process for an airport that's already built. And that's because the FAA needs a site selection before they can make the federal action of site endorsement to approve the site. And so we've been through this in the 70s, we've been through it in the early 2000s, and we're at it again. But we know more now, and we have better information now. In the 2000s, we were looking at sites north of 152 and east of town, and those areas were deemed to not be as suitable because of environmental reasons, compatibility with schools, and so on. So now we have a study area that is shaped like a blob on there that is for the most part west and south of the city. And the criteria that we look for an airport site is that, first of all, and most important, it has to have runways pointed into the wind. And so we don't have current wind information for any new possible sites because nobody knows where the site would be and there's not data down there. We were fortunate with some effort by city staff to get a burp of data from your existing AWOS, your weather observation system on the airport, and through manipulating data in our office, we were able to work with almost a year's worth of data from your existing system that we designed and was put in around 2005 or 7. And from that, we find that the wind direction is roughly 310 degrees in that vicinity. So at that airport, we know that typically the wind comes from there, at least for the sample period we had. So that's good information. It also explains why the original airport had 2 runways. One of them pointed a little farther to the west and left of the existing one. That runway's been closed over the years. So having that as a starting point, that's at least our best information for possible wind direction, we'd want to find a site in these areas that for now at least would be pointed into that wind direction. We also need a site that is not steep, doesn't have excessive costs. Airports need to be on land that is certainly 2% slope or less, and preferably even flatter. We like some slope because of drainage costs. We want the airport site to be able to flow in terms of drainage and runoff. Also, we like to have utilities nearby, but that's doable to extend utilities. We like to have reasonable soils. We like compatibility, which means not too close to town. The Airport Land Use Commission has restrictions and safety zones and so on that impact what can be done around airports. So we want to be far enough away from things that a new site would work well in terms of compatibility. Also, state aeronautics and state education requires that we be 2 miles from a school. And you can be closer than that with analysis and recommendations by state aeronautics. Our goal is try to be 2 miles away from a school. Also, we need to be 5,000 feet away from any sanitary landfills, which in my day we used to call dumps, and 10,000 feet if it's turbine aircraft, but 5,000 if it's piston. So these are some of the constraints we have. We don't know what the wind is out in these site areas, but fortunately the city chose to get ahead of this and to actually fund a reasonably cost portable wind sensing equipment that's made by a good high-quality firm on the East Coast, and that equipment should be coming shortly, can be set up, can start providing data. We could start looking at the data as it comes out and see how it's going. If we see any big problems, we could say, gee, it looks like maybe this doesn't work in this area, maybe we move it to another candidate site. So we'd be working with you on that to try to get the best use out of a year's worth of data that would need to be collected. The FAA wants to see a year's worth of data that's site-specific so that they don't end up having an airport somewhere where it really doesn't work. So within the study area, we then, working with city staff and looking around in the environs, came up with 4 possible site areas. And for simple descriptions, we'll call it Fox Hills, which is to the west along I-5, and Interstate 5 South, which is obviously along Interstate 5 into the south area, and also a central site, which is centrally located south of town and centrally located east of town. So those are 4 possible areas that looked like they could have merit. The Fox Hills site, and by the way, for the sample, we laid out the same kind of airport, 3,800-foot runway as you currently have, which does meet the needs of current and most of the future aircraft, and parallel taxiway system. It would have all the lighting and visual aids that your airport has. In fact, some possibly could even be relocated if you chose to go to a new site. Also, we have terminal facilities that would take you well beyond our planning horizon, which is 20 years. So we've at least illustrated what would those look like. So this is more development than you'd have for an initial airport. And also a conceptual access road coming in. We've also identified, having looked at assessors' maps out there, what seem to be at least preliminary initial boundaries of land that might be suitable for each of the different sites. The land would vary. But we have an objective of being below 300 acres, which is an annexation limit. And so the airport proper would be below 300 acres, but the city could own more land, but doesn't need to annex it for the purpose of approach protection, things of that type. Some land might just be a navigation easement, which gives you the right to fly over the land and but not have to own it. But that would satisfy FAA on adequate interests in the approaches. So for this site, this Fox Hills site, The runway would be generally parallel to Interstate 5. Access would come off of Volta Road. What doesn't really show up here but was modeled in our office is we took USGS maps of the topography, and it's pretty rough out there. It's undulating a lot. And in fact, we have some pretty major drainage courses coming under the freeway at the northwest end of the runway and the southeast end. And so those are things to consider at the site. However, in doing the earthwork modeling, we were able to determine that it is possible to have, in essence, the existing runway replaced at this site, the 3,800 feet, with safety areas on both ends. That's possible. That's by grading the site down and balancing. But if you ever were to expand beyond that, you'd be limited. And the reason to be limited is you've already graded down to a certain height or elevation, and the only way you make the runway environment larger is to grade down lower and expand the platform. And you can't just lift up the old airport, move it aside, do grading again, and put it back on top, i.e. not without replacing it all. So you don't really want to do that. So this site is that it's pretty limited if you chose to do just the initial earthwork to a 3,800-foot runway, which is okay because that is what you're replacing, so it's still a viable site. The next page is the airspace for that site. We chose to do a full airspace plan for each of the 4 sites so that we know that they work well. And this site has the landfill up to the left, the black blob, and that landfill is far enough away for piston aircraft. It's close by about 1,000 feet for turbine aircraft, but that's not your predominant users, and it's not a deal killer in terms of having the landfill that far out. Also, there's ways to mitigate some of this, and that's how the landfill is operated and managed in terms of attracting birds. That's the concern. As far as how do you really read this airspace drawing, basically it's like an upside-down wedding cake over the airport. You have the runway in the center, and you have the trapezoids at both ends, which are the approach surfaces, which are basically like a sloping chute that the airplanes slide down as they come into land or climb through as they depart, and those areas need to be clear of obstructions. You also have the red line that's the inner circle, and it's shaped like a racetrack, and that inner circle is the horizontal surface, and that's a pancake floating above the airport 150 feet, and nothing can go up and penetrate that. You have to keep that clear. So you can't have penetrations in there. And then farther out you have this racetrack going around with the various lines, and that's the conical surface, and that's where going outward from that horizontal surface pancake, you slope up at 20 to 1, and you don't want anything to come through and penetrate that surface. And so that keeps your airspace clear for your flight operations. And so that is important. FAA would not be interested in funding a site that doesn't have clear airspace. So for the Fox Hill site, the airspace is clear. Now we realize that each of the sites will have various existing power lines and things that have to be dealt with, but those are relatively minor issues as you got into site development and engineering. The next site is the I-5 South, and that's farther down as you even get down toward a possible future development of industrial properties in that area. And that site, again, has the same cookie-cutter layout that we chose to have all 4 sites appear the same and have the same capabilities. So the same terminal area. This one comes off of South Creek Road, and this one requires about 259 acres, is that saying? You all have your glasses. 269 acres. And so again, it's within the limits of 300 for annexation. And it's the property inside the annexation is property that would really be the airport proper and any support facilities, so that's why it would be annexed. The outside is really not developed, and it would be approach protection. And realize in all of these lands, to the extent that any of it can continue in farming, then the city would certainly be doing that. The city would have no interest in taking the land out of productive use just because the city owns it when it can still be in productive use through a lease back to somebody or whatever. And then we go on to the next one, which is the airspace for the I-5 South site. And Fox Hills didn't have any penetrations of terrain in the area because it also sits up a little bit higher. This one is a little bit lower and farther down the freeway. There are some penetrations to the west, but those only appear because we worked that accurately. On initial blush, you wouldn't have really noticed them or thought of them as penetrations because they're fairly minor. So these are not penetrations that are serious or hamper the use of the airport. Also, it would be logical that the traffic pattern for this airport would be to the right side of the drawing or to the east, just because there's plenty of room for aircraft to come in and maneuver and then make their turns to land. And it can be turbulent over the hills to the west, and so probably the preferred pattern would be to the opposite side. Just like right now, your traffic pattern is to the west of town, not over both sides, and that's because there's no reason to be flying over town to land at the airport, and therefore your traffic patterns are set up that way. So these are not a problem, but it's on a comparative basis, it's a negative of this site compared to the others because it has some penetrations, but they're not penetrations to prohibit the use. The next site is the central south site, and that one is just above Charleston Road and to the left of Center Road. And again, this site fits within the property that we've designated. None of these require road closures. That's good. We don't have to close any of these roads for the replacement of the same kind of airport that you have now. And we do have some approach areas that are across the roads, but those can be handled with easements. There are some power lines in the area about 35 feet high, but those can be undergrounded where need be, so that's not a problem or a constraint. And then the next page is the airspace for that site, and it's clean. There are no problems there. And then the last site that we looked at was the central east site, and that one is to the east side of Center Road and above Almond Drive and below Cotton. And again, it fits and works without road closure, and access would be off of Center Street. And then lastly, the airspace for that site again is clear and there are no problems. And so that's the layouts, and in essence, all four of these are sites that work from an aviation viewpoint subject to wind, and we won't know the wind data for a while. There could be some wiggles within the sites based on what the needs are for wind, and the criteria is that the wind is 95% of the time coming down the runway without any excessive crosswind. A crosswind of 12 knots or so is our limitation for the smaller aircraft. And so we will see what the wind information tells us. Our last slide is a preliminary qualitative comparison of these sites. And so we have the four sites: Fox Hills, I-5, Central South, and Central East. In terms of airspace, and this plus zero minus system, plus means the site has some real advantages over others. Zero is it's really neutral and no effect. They're kind of all the same. And minus is there's a disadvantage, minor as it may be, but some disadvantage on a comparative basis. So for airspace, all of them are about the same. They all work. There's no problems. For obstructions, Fox Hills, well, I guess it was I-5 South was the one that had them, so we got that in the wrong column. But I-5 South had some obstructions, but minor as they were. The wind is not available, so we don't know that yet. Visibility, we assume they're all the same for now until we know otherwise. You could have isolated areas of fog. I know those were issues out to the east and to the north, where you had a lot of wetlands and wildlife areas and ponding and so on. And then accessibility, they're all similar, but probably Central South and Central East are a little more accessible with the road network. Environmental factors are all pretty much the same. There's nothing in particular we know of at this time that is particularly difficult environmentally. In terms of topography, Fox Hills has some disadvantage because of the terrain, and drainage is about the same for all of them. Soils are about the same, and utilities about the same. In terms of land costs, we're showing some advantage maybe of Fox Hills. Now, you could say that's not quite true because Fox Hills has some past due debt and some issues, but this is on the assumption that the county would have some interest in working with the city and helping resolve some of those issues. So we see it has the potential of having ultimately a good land cost compared to some others, because it's not as developable for other purposes as some of the other sites could be. And the central sites have a little disadvantage on land costs because they are in prime ag land, and they're very good land, and that's worth more than land that is not as easily developed. So we don't know what the difference in land cost is. We just know that they're not the same. Construction costs, Fox Hills would have more. There'd be a fair amount of earthwork to do there and drainage. And relocation costs, there's not any particular people or things that need relocation. And utility costs, they'll all have similar costs for connecting electrical and so on. So that's kind of an initial analysis of where we are. Our next step is certainly any comments from any of you and staff along the way, but waiting for the wind information. And that's kind of it as to where we are to date. I'm open to any questions you may have.
What's our current site? How many acres?
I don't recall. It's somewhere around 200, isn't it, Mark? In that range?
Yeah. I think that sounds about right.
About 200 the proper. If you
Yeah.
add everything in, the actual proper is 125, but if you add everything in, you're probably in the 250 range. 200.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this would be a third larger site then, depending.
And that is true. However, one thing that was going on in the late 90s and through the early 2000s is the city actually was even under grant to acquire land around the existing site. And the city was finding it difficult to perform, difficult to obtain the land. It was disruptive to some of the uses around, such as agricultural at the end of the runway and so on. And so the city ended up not going forward with that land acquisition, and that probably worked out fine in the long run that you just didn't really do it. But your existing site would have more land if it were really meeting the same standard. And so, again, your existing one would probably balloon out to the 300 range if that were comparable.
Well, the benefits to moving it are phenomenal because we're looking at a new hospital. And that's kind of, the airport's kind of in our way right now to centrally locate everything. So, Mr. Kerrigan.
And that's understandable. In fact, I will say when you're doing a site selection, is this where you put an airport if you were starting over? And you would not put this airport where it is right now if you were starting over. It was a very reasonable solution in the days it was built in the 40s, but times change, land use changes, and so on. And so not only does the presence of the airport hamper the usefulness to the community through airport land use planning and zoning and so on, but also the airport has more opportunities at a different location because it isn't constrained by compatibility issues, by any possible encroachments on airspace. Trees grow up into the approaches out here that Mark has to chase, and so you can set up a new airport site with enhanced compatibility. And so in the long run, it can be good for the city, even though it's a little longer drive to a new site. But then again, if an airport's not downtown, you're going to have to drive somewhere to it.
Yeah. Well, when the airport was built, the population was probably 3,000 people, too. Mr. Kerrigan.
Bob, thank you. Really, I enjoy hearing your presentations because I learn just by being in the same room with you, and I appreciate it. And you're quite the historian, too, because I did go through a box that's about this big, and it's got airport written on the side, and in the early 2000s, they did start the process, and they got down the road, they looked at 6 sites, and they were to the northwest and to the east and south, a little bit to the southeast, and then the economy stopped, and everything got boxed up and put away. And the reason I mention that is because we picked up the ball a year and a half ago or so, and we are going through this exhaustive process, and we are spending money. But we wanted to look at just about every site that we could think of on the west side of Merced County, or at least south of the city and east of the city, and we're doing that through Bob Waddell. Came up with these 4 sites. The Fox Hill site really jumped out to city staff and myself at first, and they do have some back taxes at the county level, and they're insurmountable. They just are. I like the location because it's furthest away, I think, from the mountains, and on the day I went out there, it was beautiful and not a lot of wind, and I thought this might be it. And yes, the terrain is up and down, and it was set for golf courses and such. A lot of issues with an abandoned sewer plant. So that land out there actually has what's called negative value, which means if you give it to a developer, it's going to cost him to flatten that thing out and turn it into an airport, et cetera. So that was discouraging and frustrating on a whole bunch of different levels. I agree with you on the central south and central east on the prime ag land issue, so that kind of, we didn't eliminate them, but we kind of pushed them off to the side, and then we started focusing on this I-5 south piece. And we did meet with the property owner, and he actually did come to City Hall. We were willing to meet him at his house or wherever he wanted, but he came down here, which was really, he just walked in one day, which is pretty nice, and he agreed to let us put the wind equipment on his property and start studying the wind. And then ideally, we get down the road a few months, we just take a quick peek to see if that data is looking good or not. If it's looking good, we'll continue. We do need a year's worth of wind data for the FAA. I asked the property owner, I said, if the wind's good, would you mind letting us do some soil studies, some topography, some drainage analysis, just because we're landing planes here, and then you're going to have to check that out to see if it fits. And he said yes. And if things keep rolling, the next process would be to do an appraisal and then start negotiations with him, to which we talked, and he said, let's go down this path together. So I think we have a preferred site for now, and we're going to start with the wind studies, but ideally we'll be able to go into the next couple of steps here in the next year or so. So it's a long process, it's exhaustive, but when we're done, we can say we checked everything. And we checked it twice, and I mean, ultimately our goal is to relocate an airport so we can talk about a regional hospital. I'm very confident about regional hospital, but if we can't relocate an airport, it's hard to have the conversation about the hospital. So thank you for all your work. And Mark, when the equipment shows up, I think we have a site picked out. You know where you're going to put it, and off we go. So.
Well, and thank you. And I think the council is certainly doing the right thing by looking at what are the choices, because hospitals are very important and airports are very important. But also a better airport that has a good future is more important than one that is adequate and exists and in fact needs a lot of maintenance right now.
Correct.
And so I think this is a good fork in the road where you make up your mind as to, what's best for the city in the long run.
And I want to jump on that. That is a correct statement, and we are hearing from the FAA about deferred maintenance, and I am the one that is saying hold off, because we're going to go down this path for a little bit longer, and we're going to try to find that location. But you're right, we need to make a decision. Are we going to relocate this airport, or are we going to fix the one up we have, or what's the plan here? Mm-hmm. And I do want to state for the record, because the question has come up, what happens if you can't find a location? What happens next? Well, ideally, this I-5 South site is the wind's right, the soils are right, and we can go down this path, talk about relocating the airport here. We would have to do an EIR, and as part of that, we have to study all of the options. And one of the options is closing this existing airport. And if we don't include that in the EIR, we're subject to challenge. So people are saying, well, if you can't find a location to relocate it, what are your plans to close the airport? It has to be an option on the table. We don't like it. We want to relocate the airport. We want to do that. And that's the path we're going down, and that's why we're focusing on I-5 South. And you don't hear us talking about shutting down an airport. That's not our choice. But at some point when we talk about an environmental impact report, we're going to have to talk about it as an option, and we're going to have to study it as an option. So
That's true, and we've done several environmental reports here all the way back to the 70s when it was the site endorsement. And the choices are no airport that you close, that is a choice, and the existing airport continuing as is, which is a choice, not particularly good because it certainly does need maintenance and some enhancements, or further expansion of the existing, or possible other sites, of which we've identified 4. And Fox Hills has its difficulties, but it can work. I-5 has some real advantages, and the other 2 are perfectly workable and good sites too. So I think you're in a very good position that you have several good choices in front of you. And that's good. You're fortunate, and it's more than you had last time we did this.
Yes.
Because we really had only one particularly good choice at that time, and that one's evaporated with changes in land use and opportunity.
Right.
So
if
thank
for
you so
some
much.
reason this I-5 South location panned out, we would certainly focus on Central South and Central East. And we're just not, I said pushing it aside, because I like the I-5 South one.
Yes.
That one really emerged as a real good candidate. But if for some reason soils or drainage or wind or whatever, if that doesn't work, we're absolutely going to focus our efforts on these other 2 sites and go down that path. So.
And I think wind is the real decisive factor. That's what's going to do it for you.
Yes.
And so that's why I'm so anxious to get some good information. Yes. That's why I was glad we were able to crack the nut and open some of the bad data from your existing airport and work with it to get some results.
Yes.
We have choices.
Yes,
Good.
many choices, and even on Saturday between pancakes and hot dogs.
There you go.
Well, thanks very much.
I got one
Yes.
more quick question for you. So in the original one, when we talked about when our original plan of the industrial park and relocating an airport, we talked about a 9 or 10,000 foot runway, and that brings a whole different level of traffic that you could bring into that airport that would really work well with an industrial park. So my question is when we talk about some of these locations, if we were to make this airport in the future, make the airport bigger, because this is comparative to what we have now. You're looking at sites that would be comparative to the one we have. How big of an airplane could you land at our current one, our current size airport?
Well, your current airport handles twin-engine turboprops quite well, the smaller business jets. So it does very well. And that's the typical business user. That's the people that really are trying to come to your community. But also, I think it's important that some of these larger airports that you might have to support, let's say, any new developments along the freeway and so on, they wouldn't really be used for flying goods and materials out of there. And that's been studied up and down the valley for a long time. It ends up being more economical to truck those things to a bigger airport. And I was very surprised. A legend in airport design was a fellow, Lee Fisher, and he started a great company all over the world doing feasibility studies and finance and planning and so on. And he was selected by City of Hayward, and he laid out a beautiful industrial park with taxiways coming all through there. And he ended up retiring and ultimately dying. But I was very surprised when the city attorney said to me, you're the new Lee Fisher, which as a young guy I thought, that's pretty good. But he meant it, that I'm now taking over. I am now the designated airport consultant. And they talked about their industrial park, and I had to say to them, gee, that really doesn't work as a model anymore. People don't really taxi up to a warehouse and load their plane with things. And so even in your case, you could have some limited use of that, but you wouldn't really have the bigger airplanes and the longer runway and the heavy pavements and the heavy lifting. That really doesn't happen anymore, and it really wasn't even happening then when people hoped it would. But you're also fortunate you don't have to do that.
We were hoping that we could fly produce out of here, tomatoes, almonds. It's just too heavy.
Yes.
It doesn't pencil out, and I was absolutely flabbergasted when I was told by a number of the tomato guys in the region and the almond guys, and they said, yes, we are going to truck it to Oakland and we're going to ship it over to Asia for the next 50 years. That just absolutely doesn't work in my head, but that's what we're going to do.
Yep, and we studied that at Yakima, Washington with apples and Walla Walla, Washington, and so on. And even if you think about it, you see some of the tomatoes on the road when they fall off the truck. Imagine one coming off an airplane at 30,000 feet, so you don't want to be doing that.
Okay, very good. So I do thank you for coming and explaining to us. Those are some of the questions that I had, and to me, at this point, the I-5 South site looks like the best site. I just see, it looks like as far as property owners, there's less to deal with. I think it's always easier when there's less to deal with. When we start talking the Central South and the Central East, there's a lot of parcels in there, and it is prime farm ground. I don't think those would be as easy. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I don't think those would be as easy. So
I think you're right, and also I-5 and Fox Hills have the opportunity of being the most difficult on wind because they're closer to any turbulence coming down off the hills. So that's why I'm really looking forward to getting some good data and making sense out of it.
Very good. Well, I look forward to seeing you back here. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, any other comments on item 8? Okay, if not, let's go to item 9, council member agenda request to see if there is a majority consensus to have staff expend time on an issue and to hear it at a future meeting. Request from Mayor Villalta to see if the city can provide city-sponsored grants to community organizations for public events. We do not have a full council tonight, and the recommendation is at this time we will have a full council on December 2nd, and so we'd like to push that item up or to December 2nd. And I would make that motion. Do I have a second? Yes. Yeah.
Second.
Okay. Motion by the mayor, second by Silvera. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? None. Carried. Oh, sorry, what?
I have to abstain on that item at this time because it's still tied to the events ordinance, the events and ordinance, so I have to abstain on that item at this time.
Okay, I'll take that for right now.
As advised by the city attorney.
Okay, all right. I think, if you could do some additional research, because I think there are about 3 of us up here that probably couldn't vote on that at any given time because of where money could possibly go.
The thing, though, is my wife makes a living from the Chamber of Commerce.
Right, right, and we all have people that have different areas that may receive funds. So I'll ask the city attorney to look into it a little bit more later on. Thank you, Mr. Freya. Okay, let's go on to item 10, advisement of public notices, and we have one report. Who's going to give the report?
Mr. Vaughn.
Mr. Vaughn? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. On Thursday, November 12th, the Planning Commission will be meeting and holding a public hearing to review a site plan for the remodel of the former Lowe's and Home Improvement Warehouse. What's being proposed is a remodel of the front facade of the building to allow for 5 separate entrances so that the interior space can be divided into 5 separate retail or service spaces. They'll be considering that in a site plan review hearing at 7 o'clock on November 12th, which is not their normal night because the one preceding Wednesday is a holiday. That's it.
Okay. Let's go on to item 11, City Manager's Report.
I just have one item, and that is on Friday, November 6th, here in this room at Council Chambers, we'll have a swearing-in ceremony for our newest officer, Officer Todd Carter. And if you can come down, it takes about 15 minutes, but it's really fun, and it's one of the coolest parts of the job, and we can get a chance to introduce you to Officer Todd Carter. So if you have a few minutes, please come down.
That's at 3 p.m., is that
3
correct?
o'clock on Friday.
Okay, all right. All right.
Mark's got something that he's got
Yes.
to get off his chest.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I have to. As we're heading into winter, we can turn our sprinklers off. Each month, we're getting worse numbers on our water conservation. So the actual state law is you can't water 48 hours after a rain. But there's no reason, our city parks are like 100% off now. There's no reason now we can't go to once a week. It's hard to re-advertise all that because we have all that datum out there, but we really need to work hard because as you get into winter, we're comparing to a lot less numbers of use. So if you hold the same watering cycle, we'll just go over it. So I'm asking the public to please cut back as much as they can on watering with knowing that we're cooling down in the weather.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go to item 12, City Council member reports, and let's go to Mr. Freya first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, we're very pleased to announce the birth of our granddaughter a couple weeks ago, Adelina. That's our first grandchild. Baby and mama are all well, family's well, and yes, it is a miracle. We're very grateful for that. Sunday, November 15th, the Mercy Springs Elementary School is going to have their rigatoni dinner. And also, we're going to be doing our Handel's Messiah concert. We're also going to be doing some carols with full orchestra. We have a special guest organist coming in to play. The continuo, she was a classmate of mine, Wendy Payton, and she played piano for Mississippi State for 25 years, and she's moved back to California. And she's graciously agreed to come play for us. So we have a number of alumni coming back. It's St. Joseph's Church, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Sunday afternoon. And it's $5 per person, 12 and under is free. So just pay at the door. We're not doing advanced ticket sales. Hope you can make it. It'll be a great, great concert. Already had the announcements for this Saturday, the Veterans Parade, Veterans Day coming up, celebrate all the veterans. Want to make sure we let them know how much we appreciate them. And the moment of silence for UC Merced. Thank you for that, Mayor. My daughter is a student there, and it was rather nerve-wracking for us when we got the word until we heard her voice on the phone. So we'll pray for those people over there. It's very close to home and very scary. And thank you for the police officers there who did their job and ended the threat.
And Handel's Messiah is what?
November 15th, Sunday, November 15th, 4 o'clock, St. Joseph's.
And that's 4 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay.
With full orchestra.
All right. Thank you. Okay, let's go on to Mrs. Lewis, who is not here. Mr. Silvera.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I know it was mentioned, but I think that it's really important that if you have a chance this Saturday, go out and support the Veterans Parade. Last year was our first annual. Cassandra is the one that I know the best that was part of that. I know that there was a lot of people that helped make that happen, but Cassandra was the one I talked to the most about it. They did an amazing job for a first-year event. It was very well attended, and council got to ride on the fire truck in the parade, and it was really cool going down Main Street and seeing all the veterans out there and all the American flags out there. So I would say, hey, if you can get out there, they're supporting the Korean War veterans this year. It's a cool thing to be a part of, and it's a full day's event. There's breakfast in the morning, all the way down to the block party in the afternoon. So I'd encourage you to make it out there. The hospital dinner, that's this Saturday. I think that there may still be a few tickets available. You could get a hold of Michelle Marquise, and I don't have her number, but I still think there's a few tickets available. Michelle is in charge of philanthropy for the Memorial Hospital Foundation, and they put on an amazing event. It's one of the nicest events that you'll go to in town. I'll be attending that. My wife's all on the board, and I do their auctioneering services for them. So if you could get out there, they do an amazing job, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. 826-0591.
826-0591.
Uh-huh.
That's
Okay.
Michelle.
That's for Michelle, and just ask for her. Okay, Mrs. Stonegrove.
Thank you. Tonight I want to thank the staffs of the police department and the public works. On Friday, October 30th, the city hosted a graffiti cleanup day, and was coordinated by Noah Jones this year, and he, as well as the staffs of both departments, did an excellent job. Again, had about 50 student volunteers, I think, that came out from the high school and junior high. So I want to just thank everyone that came out and volunteered, and thank the staffs for their work on that project. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for continuing to do that. It's really important. It gets the kids involved, and they see that the work and the good work that they do, and hopefully people won't mark up the work that they did. So thank you. Again, the moment of silence for Merced, UC Merced. It's sad that we live in these times, and there's no immunity. So please say a prayer for the victims. It's not something you can guard against. It was a spontaneous act. But if you know of someone who does need help, please make some phone calls and let our PD know, because it's better to be safe and have someone checked out and someone who could need some help beforehand. The other events that were mentioned, again, if you attend our hospital gala, that money stays in town. It goes to our emergency services department. And if you can attend, that would be great. And the Vets Parade, again, this is the second annual. It is a wonderful, wonderful event to honor our veterans. And this year is again, as it was mentioned, the Korean War veterans. Last year it was World War II. So please come out either as a vet or come out as a supporter for these men and women who served our country. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:20.
Yeah.